Hello everyone, it's me Strat. Welcome to another update by, well, it's not an update, it's a live event by Force 13 today at 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC. We're covering tropics again today. We have Tropical Storm Yagi, Hector, Leapy, and 96W all active right now. I'm currently joined tonight so far just by David. Why don't you say hello, David?
It's good to be here once again, and howdy to our viewers. And not long before Nathan will be departing his holiday HQ. But what does one say about Hurricane Hector?
Hector, I did a video update on it recently. It's definitely deteriorated its satellite appearance over the past day or so. Right now, you can see the satellite imagery of it over its lifetime. It had its secondary peak yesterday, and it's starting its weakening trend. A bit more of a northward jog very lately in the most recent hours. Its eyes trying to come back out, but it just isn't really having the best of work with trying to do that. And actually, I think something to mention right now, I want to double check quickly and see if the new update is out by the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. It is. I'll pull up here really quickly. Hector has weakened below major hurricane status now. It's at 110 miles an hour, 960 millibars. This is unchanged from 3 hours ago. It's just a track update position. It's it's more north and just slightly further west. There is actually a tropical storm watch in effect for those very northwestern Hawaiian islands, not really connected at all to the main ones at all. Those will probably be lifted because the storm's expected to move southwest of the islands. I mean, you've probably been watching Hector over the past day. What have you been seeing with it?
Well, it's been another impressive system, and Strat, I'm just looking at the information on the Tropical Storm Watch. I'm not going to attempt the very lengthy name, but it is go on, you can rub it in, a marine national monument from, I know Nathan says don't try and pronounce it or attempt it, Lysianski Island to Pearl and Hermes Atoll. And so, as you said, Strat, the Tropical Storm Watch is in place, but location is 645 miles southeast of Midway Island and about 410 miles southeast of I'll stay clear of it. Another island. Maximum sustained winds is 110 miles per hour. 175 kilometres an hour, present movement northwest, 14 miles per hour, and straight minimum central pressure, mate, 960 millibars.
Yeah, and something interesting to note with Hector, it was, if I'm not mistaken, the longest continuous major hurricane in Eastern Pacific history, Eastern Pacific being east of 180 degrees. It's finally weakened below that. It's interesting to note, by Monday morning, this will be handed off to the JTWC fully. It's going to be leaving the Central Pacific Hurricane Center realm of responsibility, crossing all the way into the Western Pacific, one of the few storms to do that. I know models actually, they anticipated this weakening to happen quickly at first, but I've noticed over the past day, track forecasts overall have shifted a bit to the west, and after day 2, they show slower weakening than what they were initially anticipating beforehand.
Strat, I'm just looking at the live stream, and if you can just keep the track up, and yep. I'll just try and bring up some information. However, Giant Typhoon Warning Center has a 20.2 degrees north, 171.0 degrees west, and I should mention to the viewers that there is a delay.
Yeah, there usually is a problem. This is on YouTube's end when this happens, is that you usually have to refresh the page in this event. I don't know exactly why it happens like this in particular. It's been a problem the past couple of days. That's why I wrote just before we went live, refresh the page if it doesn't start within a couple minutes. Usually it should, but for some reason
Yep.
YouTube hasn't really been cooperative in the past couple of days.
However, that's handy to know. The Joint Typhoon Warning Centre current information has it at 20.2 degrees north, 171.0 degrees west. It's about 187 nautical miles north-northwest of Johnson Island, and as we mentioned, it's tracking northwest at 10, but this information they only update every 6 hours, so
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
moving
sure
westward at 12 knots now, or northwest at 12 knots, slightly faster than earlier.
And wave height Strat's about 26 feet.
Yeah, still pretty intense system, definitely churning up a lot of sea. The reason for its weakening, I highlighted this in particular in my update that I did. Wrong click right there. If we go to the Eastern Pacific, here's going to be Hector here in the bottom right. I'll zoom in on it a bit. Here's Hector entering an area of very, very high wind shear right now. It was teetering on the edge of it in the green where there was lighter shear for the past 2 or 3 days. It's finally crossed over, and you're going to see really high levels of wind shear. If I show the shear tendency, it's up to 50 knots in some of these areas, and it's expected to continue to increase in some of the areas that Hector's heading in over the next couple of days. The reason it's a slower weakening after day 2 is once it hits this area, there's going to be less wind shear in general, but colder sea surface temperatures will continue to hit away at the system as time goes on. Something interesting that I noted in my own video update, it's also going to be just to the left of my face here on the screen. The GFS model has been trying to say Hector will maintain hurricane intensity throughout most of this, potentially weaken slightly and then re-intensify again into a hurricane until it pulls up north and becomes extratropical. I know you've obviously been keeping tabs on it. What are you looking at in terms of the unfavorable conditions for the storm?
In addition to what you said about wind shear, I looked at the Westpac, and the environment's pretty good where the other systems are, but I've got the what is it, the water vapor, and it's still looking healthy. It's actually lost the eye. But
yeah, the eye's become clouded over. It's been struggling to stay clear today so far. It kind of closed up overnight. So, it definitely doesn't warrant the intensity it had before. It looks like in the most recent frame it fully covers up, so maybe another sign of a weakening trend with the storm.
If you can leave that up on the screen, I'm just looking at the technical information from the National Hurricane Center, the Pacific Central. Satellite loop shows Hector is feeling the effects of southerly vertical shear, with the outflow pattern becoming quite asymmetric outside the immediate eyeball. Clouding over a rather murky eye as we emerge within the last hour or so. The system is beginning to turn to the northwest, which was expected by the end of the day. The steering environment is characterized by a mid-level ridge to the northeast of the system and a mid to upper level low to the northwest. As the ridge remains stationary and the low becomes better developed, we expect an increase in forward speed as well as a continued northwest motion. By Monday, the ridge will build to the north of Hector, inducing a slight turn towards the west that will persist until the end of the forecast period, at which time Hector is expected to make another turn back to the northwest. Given the slightly early turn to the northwest this morning, the updated track was nudged slightly to the right first through the 24 hours, then back to the left, or after 48 hours to stay within the guidance envelope.
Yeah.
Southerly wind shear, is expected to increase into the 25 to 30 knot range over the next 24 hours, and this is according to the ship's model. or the ship's information, prompting us to maintain the fairly rapid weakening trend through that time. After that, shear is forecast to decrease, but sea surface temperature is forecast to steadily decrease as
Yeah.
well. So I think there's a small window of it developing further.
Yeah, it is highlighted that there's a slight chance for it to potentially re-intensify for a little bit until it really kind of fizzles out.
And then we look at the HWRF, and they're indicating Hector will weaken down to tropical storm strength within 36 hours or at the 36-hour mark. And in addition, global models want to significantly weaken Hector almost to dissipation by 120 hours. The official forecast lies between those two scenarios, describing a fairly rapid weakening of the system through 24 hours, followed by further weakening up to that, 120 hour.
Yeah.
And given the close approach to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, Hector is forecast to make on Sunday and Monday. And as we mentioned, a tropical storm watch remains in place.
Yeah, it looks like the storm may move south of the islands in general, but there is a chance based off of what's currently being shown, the wind field can scrape by it if it moves a bit north of the current forecast track, a bit further east. Here it is right now. I just popped it up on my screen briefly. You see, if you just pull this in general, the storm will likely miss in terms of tropical storm force winds, but outer bands are likely to hit the island and potentially cause some rough conditions for the people living there for sure.
The National Hurricane Center also advises that the people on Midway and the Kauai atolls should continue to monitor.
It's interesting to see this system just because of its long lifespan in general. It's not something you usually see.
Well, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center really doesn't have that much information. I'm waiting for the change to the JTWC, and then I'll be able to see what their technical information is going to be and whether it's going to be different to what the National Hurricane Center is saying. But we have...
Go ahead.
Go on.
No, you go.
All right. We have Hector at 960 millibars, winds around 95 knots. It's 19.7 degrees north, 170.4 degrees west.
And speaking of the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, we should probably move over to one of the storms over there. Let's start with Yagi. Do you want to pull that up?
Okay, Yagi is currently located 25.2 degrees north, 125.4 degrees east, winds 35 knots, central pressure 992. Now just give me a minute, we'll just switch over. We'll have a look at the flatest as soon as I bring it up. Yagi.
Yeah, I can pull up my own RAM imagery of it as well while you're waiting for that.
Okay, I'll just fire up some floaters and right, here's the visible imagery. And the Joint Typhoon Warning Center they're doing their track charts are being updated every 3 hours. Tropical storm Yagi is 151 nautical miles west-southwest of the Kadena Air Force Base, Okinawa, tracking west at 14 knots. This is over the last 6 hours. Animated infrared satellite imagery shows the system that has maintained its convective signature over this period, a robust poleward outflow into the tropospheric upper level low. I actually did some homework on that, and the cell to the northwest is providing ventilation to the flaring center convection. The surface observations, including my 8 Kojima 20 nautical miles to the south upper level analysis, indicates the system is in an area of moderate vertical wind shear offset by a poleward outflow into that upper level cell.
Yeah, if you look at the wind shear map mode, and I'll pull that up again, Yagi's actually in an area of pretty favorable wind shear. It's not really that high where we're looking at it right now. It's either 5 knots, 10 knots, or a few areas 15 if you get a bit further out from the center, which is going to be right around here. I'll pull up the track forecast. Here's where it is right now. They expect it to go up to 40 knots right now. They say it's at 35 currently, and let's see, that's what ATCF also backs up. It's interesting to see it not really be able to get its act together despite relatively lower shear and also better sea surface temperatures to deal with as well.
Well, sea surface temperature is 29 through to 31, but again, it's what is going on up in the upper levels. The center has Yagi begin to track northwest under the steering wedge through the forecast period. The marginal favourable conditions will promote a slight intensification to 40 knots in the next 12 hours. It will gradually weaken as poleward outflow reduces, and Tropical Storm 18W will make landfall 160 nautical miles south of Shanghai.
Yeah, it's the third storm in the past month that's really come close to Shanghai in general. We had Zhongdari in July, and we also had, I'm blanking on the name of the system, is 12W, I remember that. But that also came up towards Shanghai. They've had a lot of activity lately. Speaking of other named storms in the area, we also have Tropical Storm 19W, or now named Leapy by the JMA. I'm going to pull up some satellite imagery for that. They currently have it, let's grab out the warning graphic, at 55 knots. They expect it to reach typhoon status, or they did at least in the past. Now they say it'll peak at 55 knots. And weaken pretty quickly. They say it'll dissipate by day 4 at this point in time, south of mainland Japan. Here's what some of the satellite imagery shows of it right here. Even though it's expected to develop after 96W, 96W's really failed to develop, and this storm has kind of flourished. It has some nice outflow around its core, and it really has outer bands that are kind of detaching from the system a little bit, it seems. It's obviously, we'll go to the wind shear graphic, it's going to be over here. The core of the system is in moderate to light wind shear, so it has the opportunity to intensify a bit in the next day or two before it encounters much more hostile conditions.
Straight in my update that I put out on the main channel prior to this live broadcast event, I'm not sure whether I included the cycle intensity, and a couple of the models are indicating possibly a Cat 2 system.
From 19W?
Yeah, Leapy.
Let's
Or
see.
90.
I'll pull up a model then to take a look. This is going to be the HWRF model right here. This is their 18Z run, so this came out less than 2 hours ago. It starts with 50 knots. This one peaks it at 61 knots, it seems, and dissipates it just south of Japan as a larger area of vorticity in the South China Sea kind of gives it wind shear, kills it off. The GFS, let's take a look at it. GFS peaks it as a typhoon at 72 knots, it seems, and then has it actually survived to just miss southwestern Japan's coastline, maybe inflict a little bit of wind there, and then dissipate as it moves towards Shanghai in general. And then let's take a look. Let's go wide range for the Western Pacific so we can see what the Euro is trying to say with the system. It keeps it on the periphery of Yagi in general. If I actually go here, we can see what it's going to say the minimum sea level pressure is right here. It says it'll be, before you can't really see it, it says 998. These winds are 850 millibars, so you can't really trust it for what it says, but it shows a pretty healthy tropical storm that just gets killed off really within 3 days. And then the other model we can take a look at would be the Icon model, the German model. It doesn't really have it developed properly, so it isn't really tracking it right. But they both show, you know, all the models really show quick intensification and then very quick weakening right after.
I think I might be a little bit confused with 97L, but I'm just looking at Yagi's intensity. Yeah, they only have the model consensus is just a tropical storm, but
yeah,
it is 97W, which is the eastern one.
Mm-hmm. That's the
19. One. Yeah, it's tropical storm.
Tropical storm Leapy at this point.
Yeah, they the models are actually showing a possible Cat 3.
That's really surprising.
Actually, one's borderline Cat 4, but the consensus is high range Cat 1.
That's really surprising to see. They've really picked up on the potential intensity. I'll pull up the visible satellite right now, and maybe that'll give a bit of an exclamation because it is looking pretty impressive there in general. Switch back over to my tab. This is the visible satellite imagery for Leapy. The storm definitely looks impressive. It has some banding to the east of it that could be influencing its potential intensification, but it looks like it has a pretty solid core. You'd agree with that?
It's looking healthy, Strat. I was looking at the satellite imagery earlier, and it's definitely looking more healthy. And I know we've got 96W. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center, they have 96W, which is the one closer to Vietnam, on medium for further development.
Yeah, I'll pull up my JTWC map mode. They lowered the chance of development significantly for this system. They say it won't develop in the next day anymore. Right? That's what they've been saying with it?
They actually have the JTWC doesn't have any information on 96W.
They had a formation warning though 2 days ago, right?
They've cancelled that. Would you believe?
They did cancel it. They lowered it to likely, but expected to occur beyond 24 hours. I'm almost certain the reason for that is that the center of circulation is actually over southwestern China right now, and convection's diminished significantly in the past day with the system as well because of this. Let's go back here quickly and pull up the imagery. It isn't looking particularly well organized, elongated in general. Here's the imagery for it. You can see the center of circulation right along southern China coast, just in general with how things are circulating around it. It's still producing a lot of rain in general, though. It's got convection associated with it stretching from Vietnam all the way into the South China Sea. So it is a system that's posing a significant threat. Does Vietnam still have it as a tropical depression?
Yes, and I have actually, when we covered this system yesterday, it was only about 40 knots, but currently on the screen is the latest chart from the Vietnamese weather office, and they have winds over 50 knots.
With this system right now?
With this system.
That is really interesting.
And there it is there. They have it at 21.4 degrees north, 111.3 degrees east. They have it as actually, they only have it as a tropical depression. I think it should be a tropical storm, considering the wind speed is 52 knots, and they actually have it increasing.
That's really surprising, considering how disorganized the storm's looking in general right now.
So they have it 56 kilometers an hour for the next...
kilometers per hour is less than knots. Significantly
Well, what's
less.
56 kilometers? What's that, about 30,
let's go...
30 knots?
Let's quickly check
But their position has, they've actually ramped it up. When you look at the wind speed factor, it's only 40.
They're trying to say it's about 35 miles an hour sustained winds.
Yeah, well, when I looked at the maximum sustained winds factor yesterday, it was only 40, but they've actually increased it by 12 and then 14 for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But unfortunately, the JTWC doesn't have any information on it.
It's interesting because that Vietnamese track almost seems like an outlier. I'll pull up right now my Chrome, and that should be visible. It shows this is the GFS model. This would be right now. It shows it right where it is, really just inland or just off the coast of southern China. It does stall it for 3 days in this region. Makes it a moderate tropical storm. 55 miles an hour is what it tries to say, or 60 miles an hour, before pushing it westward into Vietnam. I know the track you're showing was slightly different, but it pushed it further south than the GFS did. And the HWRF takes it into a completely different direction. I'll zoom out for this one, actually. This would be hour 0 once it loads properly. It has it in a similar spot, but it takes it eastward instead. It brings it with this bigger flow and brings it eastward and then stalls it out. So it's interesting to see the model spread on this isn't really uniform at all.
Now, this is the HWRF model, and I was thinking, whilst you're bringing this particular model up, I was just thinking of what we've said over the last couple of days, that we could see a bit of a jolt to the east.
Yeah, a lot of the models are highlighting that it'll either stall or meander a bit to the east in the next couple of days.
But what, from my position over here in Australia, a tropical system needs to be, what, 50 miles, 50 kilometres off the coast to absorb the moisture, and it fires up again. So, well, let's see what the JTWC has to say in their next update. I think they will reissue a formation alert.
Yeah, even though convection's diminished, there's definitely more rotation. It actually looks a bit more organized than yesterday because of its slightly more northern location. It's really on the borderline of unfavorable conditions for wind shear. It's around 15 knots right now. But if it were to move just 50 miles or so to the south, it'd be encountering over 40 knots of wind shear. So it's really on the edge for formation.
I just wish Vietnam doesn't have any technical information. I've looked at the Chinese the weather office. They've got nothing, and as I mentioned, highlighted in my update on Libby, the information from the JMA. I'll just have a look at the JMA and see whether they've got.
Yeah. Before you do that, do you mind actually checking the MJO? Someone's asking a question for it in the chat.
Oh, the old MJO pulse. That is.
Yeah. And someone's also asking in chat how strong we thought Kristy was in winds and pressure. I'm pretty sure we're in alignment that it was with the NSG forecast. It never really became organized enough to be called a hurricane.
Right, MJO pulse.
Alright, there we go. Let me pull it up for you. It's close to neutral right now. Is that what it's saying?
Actually,
it's in the Western Pacific, but it's close. It's not very strong, is what it's saying.
What I look for, if the line is inside the inner circle, it's neutral. But if we go to the blue line, it is actually expanding. It's going away from the circle boundary, so it looks like it could actually be increasing in strength.
It looks like for the better half of a month now, it's been in the Western Pacific as either a moderate or weak pulse at this point. So that could definitely be an influencer in why we're seeing so much activity in the Western Pacific right now.
But Strat, we had a look, or we covered this yesterday, but I'm a little bit concerned at the extended range for the Westpac, because I've picked up. You've actually the blue model. I was looking at that.
Yeah, that goes
earlier,
to a week out right
and
now.
It was picking, and it's actually picking up those possible systems that we were talking about yesterday. And the Westpac, it is really firing up. I do not see it easing. And what are we going to see? Another 2-3 systems behind 97.
I mean, it's really too far out to say for certain, but with the MJO and entering peak season, we've really seen a lot of activity in the Western Pacific lately, and you know there's a chance that that really continues going forward. So
with the go on.
I was going to say if there's more activity, I wouldn't really be that surprised, but you know, models right now are kind of iffy on whether or not there will be new activity at this point.
So the $1 million question is, how deep will Leapy go? We still got Tropical Storm Yagi, but I think it's weakening?
It's kind of, well, I wouldn't say weakening necessarily.
Borderline.
Kind of, yeah. I think something we should talk about in terms of weakening systems, let's actually take a quick look at now degenerated tropical storm Kristy. It's currently at depression strength, but if you're looking right here on the screen right now, it's actually had a flare-up of convection over the past few hours, something that, you know, it definitely was lacking before. It is a remnant low at this time. I'll pull up the National Hurricane Center's reasoning for that right here. And this was issued earlier today, this advisory by the National Hurricane Center at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's actually gone. They don't have it here anymore. It's gone. I can't pull it up.
I've got nothing.
Actually, this is something interesting. They just issued this. Showers and a few thunderstorms have redeveloped in association with post-tropical cyclone Kristy, located about 1,400 miles west of the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. However, this low is expected to continue moving over cold waters, and regeneration to a tropical cyclone is not expected. But they have given it a 10% chance of redevelopment, which is something pretty interesting to see. I did not really expect that. The reason is this flare-up that it's just had because it still has rotation, although it looks like it's starting to die off in more recent frames.
Just looking at the East and North Pacific tropical weather outlook, that's for 5 p.m. On the 11th.
Yep,
tropical
30
wave.
minutes ago.
Yeah, tropical wave located about 600 miles south of Manzanillo, Mexico. Continues to produce, as you said, a larger area of cloudiness, showers and thunderstorms. The system has shown some increase in organisation since yesterday. Additional development is possible over the next couple of days. Upper level winds appear to be more conducive for development by the middle of next week, and a tropical depression could form by that time, whilst the wave moves westward, further away from the coast. And for the next 48 hours stretch, they have it 50%, and 5 days, 50%.
Yeah, it actually has been designated as Invest 97E. It might actually, it is here on satellite imagery. I can pull it up here. This is the Ghost 16. It's obviously really disorganized at this time. That's why there's a low chance for development in the next 2 days, really. It just looks like a disorganized wave in general, but it does have the opportunity to potentially get its act together and form into a cyclone.
And location of 97E is 8.5 degrees north, 107.1 degrees west. It's 25 knots, and central pressure is 1,009.
Yeah, here's some of the intensity forecast models. A few of them actually develop it into a tropical storm within 5 days. You see a couple of outliers out of those that don't. The reason there's not really much of these right now is because it isn't really organized enough to warrant attention of the major models or be a named storm to get more models on this forecast string. But the few that are here try to show it developing. And if we take a look quickly at visible satellite imagery, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you could bring up the satellite imagery for the XPAC region.
Yeah, for the whole Eastern Pacific, let's do that as well. Let's go here.
But whilst...
And here we go. This is the Eastern Pacific at this time. I'll actually zoom in on it. Here we go. Here's the remnants of Kristy here closer to the top, and then here's 97E. You can see there's some rotation with it, but it's still highly disorganized at this point in time.
But you look at, well, the wave to the west of the Baja Peninsula, and all that convection, the flaring, so that's actually increased considerably over the last, what, 24, 30 hours?
Yeah, they just don't really expect this one to develop. If I'm gonna put a guess, I'll probably put it to higher wind shear. That's the Australian basin. I don't want to be looking here. That's the Atlantic.
No, you don't want the Australian basin.
Yeah.
Although the vorticity's looking very healthy along the east coast of Australia, but...
Moderate wind shear for this system, light wind shear for the other one, 97E, that actually they put as a chance for development. If I go to 850 millibar vorticity, you'll see there's a larger area of vorticity with 97E. That's really why it's so disorganized in general. That's why you aren't really seeing much development occurring right now. It's going to have to centralize itself much more before it can really develop. Here's the remnants of John still going. If I pull up the Eastern Pacific loop, you'll see it's actually still spinning right here, winding down. It doesn't really have any cloud tops left with it anymore, but it's still spinning. And then there's also the remnants of Kristy there as well. And then, let's see, also going back to that, here's 97E. It's a really broad system. That's why they don't really expect it to develop in the next 48 hours. They expect it to remain pretty disorganized and take a while to get its act together to the point where it can really be something that could be a tropical depression. But that's why they're giving it a chance to develop 50%. It's a coin flip for them right now.
And so looking at the 850 millibar vorticity further to the west is Hector. And the vorticity is not looking very healthy. I should mention to the viewers, when you view the 850 millibar vorticity, it's the area red up to the pinkish right, and where you can see Hector, there's just no high intensity in the colors, but
Oh, it's still got
it,
really high intensity on it. Right down here to the bottom. It's just covered by the icon a little bit.
yeah, just basically to the south, and I think that's where the bulk of the activity is.
Yeah,
But
I'll pull up the satellite imagery of Hector again so we can take another look at it. Here it is right here. I want to stop at the latest frame. We go to the end. The eye is still remaining covered. It's disappeared in the last couple of frames. Definitely a
it was
sign of the
because
weakening
of the
trend of the storm.
cloud, but it's still, well,
Eye's still there, but it's clouded over at this point in time. Definitely the sign of the weakening trend with the storm. You can actually see now as it continues to move northwest into higher wind shear, you can see the cloud tops being sheared away slowly as the storm still maintains a pretty solid core, but it's starting to become slightly less organized as wind shear is starting to take its toll on the system. And what I mean, here, let's pull up the forecast, intensity forecasts, actually. I want to take a look at these. I haven't gotten the chance to see them. Here they are right here. There's actually been a bit of a change, really. They definitely show the steady weakening for the next 2 days down to minimal hurricane status. But most of the models after this point keep it as a minimal hurricane, at least for the rest of the time period, going out to 5-6 days. There's a couple that drop it off completely and dissipate it, but most of them are in disagreement with that. It definitely goes in line with the forecast that the National Hurricane has been putting out, saying that they do expect wind shear to lessen after 48 hours. I know the GFS model, which is going to be directly to the left of my webcam, shows a similar story, that it tries to maintain hurricane status, which is definitely something to keep an eye on. It's, you know, as it moves into the Western Pacific, I'm really interested to see what the JTWC is going to put out for their advisories on it. Do you agree with that? Alright, it looks like David's away for the second, so we'll continue to move on to another storm right now.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here. I just had
good.
the headset on pause, but I was just looking at the rainbow floater on Hector, and it looks like that eye is fading away. But Strat, you mentioned about the JTWC. I think it's what, another hour or two before they update.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can try to pull something up. Here's what the JTWC is currently showing. You can see Hector here in the Central Pacific. It's going to be approaching within the next 2 days, entering the JTWC's realm of responsibility. Right now, they have responsibility over Leapy, Yagi, and 96W at this time.
Now, I'm just looking at the Guam Weather Office. I think that's National Weather Service. I think they...
Yeah, I'll actually...
Guam, I think, is Majuo weather.
And as we were talking about John's eye, I'm actually going to pull up microwave imagery of the system. Here it is right here. You can see it starts out at 115 knots at the start of this. The eye wall weakens on the southern side. It goes down to 95 knots by the end of this. As we continue on, this is earlier today. This is UTC time. So you'll see by the time we get to the end of the day, eye walls are eroded significantly in general. And, that's definitely the sign of the weakening trend. Most of the southern side is almost collapsed at this point, really. It becomes really exposed. And that's just, another sign of the system weakening. I actually want to go back and take another look at Yagi in particular, just because the storm is the closest named storm to impacting land at this time. it's starting to come to the point where it is going to be impacting Shanghai shortly. Let's get a loop of its system right here, and I'll pull it up for you guys. It's still really disorganized, and generally you have two main areas of convection, one to the north of the center and one to the south. The northern side is starting to impact eastern China coast already. Obviously, the main threat with this system is rain. You're more into the Western Pacific because it's closer to your home. So, what have you been really thinking with Yagi over the past days? It continues to move closer to China.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Chinese weather office, they don't have anything on Yagi. They've got a little bit on 96W. The JMA is covering Tropical Storm Leapy, but it's still one. It's the rainfall factor again.
Yeah, because you look at let's pull up their product quickly for Yagi, and I'll switch over to that when my page responds.
And Strat, well, sorry, mate.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to highlight to our viewers, Nathan has just communicated in the background here, and he's just asked us to relay that he's only got a couple more nights down there in the Caribbean, and he'll be back in his HQ. So
yeah, really can't wait to have him back. He's, you know,
I think that's what Tuesday or Wednesday my time here in Australia. So. And I say he's looking forward to coming back.
Yep. Yeah. He has a lot of ideas written out. He said to me that he was upset that he came out with them so early because it meant he had to wait longer to put them back into action. But, you know, he's got a lot of plans. He's been talking about a few of them openly in some chat rooms, so there probably will be some changes to the animations. I know people are going to be excited about that. But getting back to the main topic, really, here's Yagi's JTWC forecast track. It's moved further west than they initially forecast. First forecast 2 days ago when we streamed had it making landfall in North Korea. Then they said Shanghai, and it's had a due westward draw instead of a northwest motion, which they predicted in yesterday's track. So now they're saying it'll make landfall south of Shanghai at this point, which with a relatively large wind field actually for a system that's so weak. But like we were talking about, the main threat with this system is obviously going to be rainfall. Even though the system's going to make landfall south of Shanghai, you have a big area of convection nearing Shanghai or actually potentially going north of it instead of, you know, what we normally expect with a storm with its center going south of an area. And
Strat, for our viewers, I'd just like to mention that I did provide a rainfall model. It's a pivotal weather website. It's a GFS model in the update on Leapy. So if you want to have a look at that update, you'll see the rainfall factor. There's hardly any rainfall information on the JMA or even the Chinese Met Office or the Vietnamese, but the GFS model is actually one that I personally favour.
So let's take a look at that then, and we can actually pull that up, no problem, just with a couple of clicks.
The pivotal weather website, it's a GFS model.
Preset moisture, let's go with
moisture.
Total accumulated precipitation.
Yep.
Here you can see that
northern and also area tropical tidbits have it. So there's two sites that we can source the rainfall, and the rainfall scale on the screen now on the right hand side, it's the area in yellow, which is the highest.
Yellow is going to be the highest. This is in millimeters. This is in millimeters. So you can see here's Hector out here in the Central Pacific. Here's Leapy. Here's 96W, and here's Yagi going towards Shanghai. If we go out just a day, you'll see you're already in the purples. You're already approaching closer to 200 millimeters of rain in Shanghai, which is a really significant amount. You're also getting that in southern China with 96W. So these are really big rainfall threats for these regions, potential major flooding scenarios. And then as we go out to day 4, you're seeing parts of southern China are really getting a lot of rain. You're getting close to 500 millimeters of rain at this point, 50 centimeters. So potentially over a foot of rain in some of these areas. So it's definitely going to be a threat. And if we go all the way out to day 5 in this, you'll see rain.
I think we might have a technical issue, Strat.
Do we have a technical issue?
I think we might. Hang on. Apology. I've just lost the link. Okay, we're back. Yep.
All right. Well, that was a little bit of a scare for myself. I think
yes.
A good chunk of viewers actually had that happen to them, so I apologize for that. But now that we're back with whoever's left, we'll make sure to do out the rest of the stream. This would be day 5 on the GFS model. It really spares Shanghai a significant amount from the heaviest rain of Yagi. It shows it really not really living up to fruition. What it does show as a threat, though, is 96W in really southern areas of China and northern Vietnam, putting over a foot of rain in some of those areas. So that could be a real big problem for those areas.
And Strat, just whilst we look at this, just a couple of questions. Nathan, to get in contact with us on Discord is 9094 #9094 on Discord.
Yeah, it'll be
it's 413 on Skype.
413 on
Skype. Nathan.
Yep, 413 at extension 9094 on Discord. And I we're always, we have a few people on the team that manage the Twitter. If you tweet us there at Force13, we'll usually be able to get back to you within an hour or two, depending on who's watching. Knowing me at this time of year when I don't have work, I'm spending a lot of time on my computer, so you can count on me to try to get a quick response back. But going out, I want to see what other models here show rain forecasts. The German model actually does, so let's take a look at this.
That's the icon model.
Yeah, German. You show.
That's one that
This one's actually lagging behind a little bit in time, but it shows a lot of rain being fallen on really southern China, just missing Hainan Island. See if the CMC has something similar. It does. Here's going to be the rain forecast from them. If we go out to 5 days, you're going to see a lot of rain impacting the Shanghai area, going up the coast closer to Beijing, and then a lot of rain just off the coast of Hainan Island. So there's a lot of uncertainty really with how much rain is going to fall, but these are definitely major threats to the area that can produce a lot of rain. You see this convection here already getting up closer to Shanghai, probably some rain already falling in that area. And it's been really fortunate that this system has been sheared so much the rest of it for most of its life that now that it's in a more favorable environment, it can't really get itself together. I think something similar can be said for 96W as well. Let's pull up the satellite imagery for that again. Once it loads up, you'll see it's been struggling in a really similar manner. A lot of its rain subsided since yesterday and 2 days ago. If you look in the bottom left corner, it shows a more longer run of the animation for the satellite imagery. It really shows that the system's really diminished in intensity, at least in rain, not necessarily organization, which is really nice to see with these for the area, because this storm has stalled there for over 4 days now. Is expected to stall for an even longer period of time as well. So hopefully that really keeps up. It's in an area where it has a small particular place that it needs to be to really develop because of the location of wind shear directly to its south and land interaction directly to the north. It has a really small sweet spot that it needs to fit into to really develop that it hasn't really gotten into yet, and that's really fortunate to see at this point.
Now we've got, sorry, Strat, we have this area of interest over there in the Caribbean, Norway tracking. I've noted your comment about the
the Atlantic Ocean. Let's take a look at
the
that.
Caribbean. I'm just waiting for Nathan to possibly give me an update
For the Caribbean.
How he sees the Caribbean region.
Well, here's the Western Atlantic shot, which is mostly the Caribbean. I don't really see anything in this in particular. If you're looking at the Atlantic 5-day shot, this tropical wave, obviously there's way too much dry air. It has a 10% chance of development. If you've been keeping track of it, you've really seen it start to get crushed out in the past day or two. It's not really going to develop. You see the other one, the non-tropical low pressure area, that if I go to a slightly wider shot going over the whole Atlantic, it's this swirl and this really that they're expecting to become an area of interest, but it really shouldn't develop either. It's not really in conditions that you would expect a system to really go for. I know we're running low on time, so it's nice to get a little quick snapshot there. So let's do a quick run around quickly, I guess, before we have to wrap up things for the stream. Let's start with the Eastern Pacific. Kristy generated today actually became an invest again because of its flare-up of convection over the center. If we pull that up again quickly, we'll take a look. You can see convection come back up and try to maintain itself. It's still a spin with the system, of course. It still is vorticities. It just really G-generated. It didn't have any convection left. That's why it was, G-generated and no longer a tropical cyclone. If you widen out, you'll still see John north and east of Kristy as well, spinning down. We have 97E on this new system here, 20% chance of development in the next 2 days, 50% in 5 days. If we go to the wide shot of the Eastern Pacific, you'll see it's still really disorganized in general. It's a really broad area of circulation. It really needs to organize itself to be a named system. So it's going to take a while for it to really get its act together. Going over to the Central Pacific, we still have Hurricane John churning. Finally weakened below major hurricane status today. It has now the record for the longest staying major hurricane system without weakening below status at over 8 days. And Eastern Pacific is east of 180 degrees. The storm's actually within the next 2 days is going to be crossing past the international date line and will be one of the few storms to go all the way from the Eastern Pacific, pretty far east might we add, all the way into the Western Pacific. It is expected to move northwest, weaken pretty quickly the next couple days, and then potentially maintain its intensity out to day 5. The system has really been a long-lived one and interesting to watch. We also in the Western Pacific have 96W, still struggling to really organize itself, although it is still likely at this time that it forms into a tropical cyclone. Then going out again, we have newly formed Tropical Storm 19, Tropical Storm Leapy, according to the JMA. It's looking pretty organized at this point in time, especially compared to the other systems in the Central Pacific Ocean. You can see it really has a nice area of convection right over its center. Eastern parts are really getting detached from it as they're sheer to the east of the system. It is expected that this storm could potentially become a weak typhoon, although according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center at this time, it's forecast to peak at 55 knots, which they're saying it is at right now. And then lastly, we do have Tropical Storm Yagi as well. It's in a lighter area of wind shear, so it could try to get its act together a little bit, but it is supposed to make landfall in China within the next 36 hours as a weak tropical storm. Rainfall already starting to impact Shanghai. Center of circulation is actually in between these two areas of convection, so you don't really have anything covering it in particular. It's really struggled through its whole lifetime and is expected to do so through the rest of it. That's gonna really... Yeah, what is it?
I'd just like to jump in, and I'm just looking at the JMA. They have it intensifying down to 980. So they have it 985 12 UTC today. But they 985, then they have it up to 994. So, and they have it as a tropical depression on the 14th.
Yeah. Okay, great. And you'll see, models are wanting it to become a typhoon. Leapy, Hurricane potentially week 1. GFS in the top left shows it becoming a minimal Category 1 typhoon. Official forecasts say weaker for now, but that may change. That's going to be all the time we have tonight. Apologize for some of the technical difficulties that we faced today. Wasn't really expecting that to happen all of a sudden. YouTube's been acting a bit over the past couple of days, and we've had to fight through that. But hopefully you guys are still getting the information you guys need to get. Make sure to check us out here on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't. You know, we're always producing updates. We had 2 out today, one from me, one from David, and this live stream, of course. Follow us on Twitter at Force13, all in text. You can find us there. We usually put imagery of storms or we link our updates and live streams. That's what we've been doing lately. Twitter at Facebook at Force13. I don't manage that personally, but we do have pretty good content there from what I've seen so far. And then also we're on Patreon at Force13. We always appreciate any contribution. It really means a lot, and you can super chat here as well. We probably will be streaming again tomorrow night if it warrants it. I'm not sure yet. Might want to take a day off for once. Nathan will be back within 3 days now, up and running, so he'll be back to cover storms as well, and that's going to be nice to have, of course. So hopefully this stream is helpful for you guys tonight. We'll see you next time. Take care.
And bye for now.